Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Customer Success Unlocked, ESG's monthly webinar series. That's a series that's on a mission to answer that burning question customer success practitioners everywhere always ask: does anyone in my company actually listen to me? My name is Peter Armley, and I'm the Vice President of Customer Success at ESG. The Customer Success is a service company. We enable you to build, operationalize, and transform your CS organization so you can improve your key metrics and accomplish your ultimate goal of reducing churn and increasing retention. Our webinar series is intended to be an opportunity to tackle important customer success topics that we believe need some additional exploration. We're seeking depth in the discourse, and we want substance without ego. So we enlist guests who have experience doing the things customer success should be doing, people who have ideas, and more importantly, people who have a generosity of spirit and are eager to share their points of view. Just a little housekeeping. Tell us in the chat where you're calling in from. We always appreciate that. We'll have around 50 minutes of conversation, which should leave us time to field some audience questions. I may sprinkle questions in during the conversation if I see one that's particularly pertinent to what we're talking about. So feel free anytime to lob a question in the window. So let's get started. The title of today's webinar is Tackling the Hard Things About Hard Things. And my guest today is Edward Chiu, CEO of Catalyst Software. If you are unfamiliar with Catalyst, it's the CS platform company that seems to want to shift the focus and push the boundaries of customer success in a more ambitious direction. As a clue for what that can look like, all you have to do is look at their website, on which they refer to their solution as a customer growth platform. To set up our conversation today and to add more context for the introduction of Edward, I'd like to quote from his company's ebook on customer-led growth. Bear with me a little bit here. The old adage of hiring a CSM for every X amount of accounts signed or X amount of revenue per book of business to be the attrition stopgap of the company must go. Instead, leaders need to anchor their strategy around the CSM's goals: retention, expansion, and adoption, and forecast the time spent to achieve these desired outcomes per account to better assess CS capacity. And for me, this is the mic drop sentence coming up because it puts a spotlight on the kind of transformation we need. In addition, business leaders need to find the right mix of CS, sales, marketing, and product team members that work to uphold your organization's approach to customer-led growth. So with that provocation, Edward, I'll start with this question. I don't think I need to talk much more about your company because this all kind of organically happened during our conversation, but you and your brother started Catalyst about 7 years ago. Obviously, you had to have a lot of confidence just to get that thing off the ground. But has the company's success to date been a surprise to you? I mean, you've had to grow the company during extraordinary times. Some of the most tumultuous years of the last 40, boom times, pandemic, war, high inflation, and a high cost of money. So what do you think? Has it been a surprise how Catalyst has grown?
First of all, Peter, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be on a panel and discussion with you. I think it absolutely has been a surprise. Which first-time founder, once you can make it past like 2 employees, like, are you not surprised that you're able to do the things that you are? What makes it even more remarkable is, we went through COVID and my co-founder was on a ventilator and we had a massive economic downturn and we had, we're still in a somewhat economic downturn. Mortgage interest rates are like 8% right now. Who knows how people are affording homes right now? It's probably, at least in my lifetime, the craziest decade of period in which it's for any leader and also just business professionals in general, for the CS folks on the calls, for the revenue folks on the call, for the marketing folks on the call, for any business professional. It's been a very, very chaotic year. And I think I love the prequel that you gave to the discussion, which is, this is why we made a major shift to revenue, because I started Catalyst. Prior to that, I was a customer success leader. So I had firsthand knowledge just how important it is when new business revenue is not working. And that's what was happening at my previous company. And the CEO said, look, I need you to go figure out how to extract more revenue from our existing customers. That was when the economy was great. Right now, when the economy is awful, that sentence rings even more true.
Mm.
So for us, it wasn't some major shift that we're like, oh, let's place a big bet here. We just made the shift before anyone else. And frankly, our product has always been designed to extract more revenue versus just a baseline of driving retention.
Yeah, I think I like that a lot, and I think it reminds me of a conversation you and I've had probably a year or so ago, where I learned more about your background, and I really respect that because it's unusual to have a CEO of a CS platform company to actually have been a practitioner at one point. I think that that lends a little bit of deep history that can be leveraged, and so and also not many people can run a dynamic business with a sibling. So I'm curious, do you think the sibling dynamic, you and Kevin, makes a difference for Catalyst? And second part of that question, how has your role as CEO evolved over the last 7 years, especially given those forces we just kind of talked about? I think the two questions are kind of related, but not completely. But I think you get where I'm going with this.
Yeah. You know, if you look at both Kevin and I on LinkedIn, a lot of people think he's older than me, which is great for me. I love that. But I'm actually 5 years older than Kevin. And I think starting a company with family members in general is hard. I think you see very rarely, husband and wife duos that do a good job. Starting families with distant cousins, but starting a business with a sibling is, in my opinion, just generally that much harder. There's always going to be a little bit of the older brother, younger brother duo. There's that little hidden behind the scenes sibling rivalry. But at the end of the day, I think it's the strongest force, period. Most people are on there doing things on their own. And as we discussed, starting a company is hard. Going from one employee to 100 employees is incredibly hard.
Yeah.
There's going to be so many ups and downs. For those of you that eventually want to start a company one day, your first couple of years is brutal. And honestly, it doesn't get easier. The problems just change. And having somebody who is not only your blood that knows the business and is passionate about the business, that is equally as committed, when you're down, they'll pick you up. When they're down, you'll pick them up. And there's no filter. You don't have to think about, oh, what am I going to say to my co-founder? Because at the end of the day, we've only known each other for 3 years. We have known Kevin since he was, a little tiny little baby. So, there's no filter in what I'm able to say to him and vice versa. And I think that's amazing. And I think in terms of how the role as CEO has evolved, I went from doing everything. And to your point, like as a CS leader and a CS operator, some people call it credibility, but I call it just, I've been in the trenches with everyone on this call. Like every job that the folks on the call I've done it. Like I've been to CSM, I've been to CS ops. So in the beginning days as a CEO, you're doing a lot of that. You are the CSM, you are the product person, you are the sales person, you are the finance person, you are the legal person. Now I have a bunch of people doing that. And I think the role in this economy is about making tough calls. Like being a CEO is not a fun job. You are constantly making incredibly tough decisions that most people either will question or challenge, but ultimately it's your company and you have to do what's best. And I think that's the reality for every CEO right now. It's about making the hard decisions and really feeling the hard things about hard things and doing it in an environment that is unforgiving. So,
Yeah.
I wish there was a better answer for that, but I'm sure the folks on the call, you can see that in your CEOs that you work for. If you are a CEO, you're absolutely going through it.
So the public, at least my perception, and I'm part of the public of the two of you, is that it seems to me you're very transparent, you're very direct, because you're both very vocal, but not in a kind of a spammy way. I would say just on your presence on LinkedIn, what you guys post about pretty cut and dry. Like you guys are really clear about what you're trying to say, and you don't mind being provocative. And I appreciate that because there's kind of like intelligent kind of approach to it. Is that really intentional? Is that just the Chu brothers kind of doing what they do? You know?
We don't view it as provocative. We just view it as being transparent, and then we just view it as that's how God made us when we are talking. Like, that's just a way that we talk in general. And I'm not going to change it for how we communicate on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn and social media is another form of communication.
Mhm.
If you're unwilling to stand behind what you're going to say, then you shouldn't say anything. So, it would take me hours to modify the way that I talk. And as a CEO, that's the last thing I have. I don't have extra hours to spare. So what you see on LinkedIn from Kevin and I is what you get from us in person. One of our core values at Catalyst is be transparent. And the other one is be an owner. And we believe every single person in the company is an owner of the business. And in order for you to be an owner of the business, you have to be able to communicate effectively. You have to be able to communicate quickly. You have to be able to communicate transparently.
Yeah.
And transparency doesn't mean provocative. Transparency doesn't mean disrespectful. Transparency doesn't mean it's not thoughtful.
Agreed.
Transparency is just, hey, there's information that needs to be shared. And on LinkedIn, I share a lot of personal information that I hope is inspiring to others. And on LinkedIn, I share a lot of wins and losses from a business perspective that I hope is helpful to others. And there's a lot of noise on LinkedIn, and we try to cut through that noise by giving people the real raw truth about what they need to see, and hopefully it helps them in their day, because people are scrolling fast, and there's
Yep.
only so much time that you can digest information. And the folks on the call, you have the toughest jobs as CSMs and post sales team right now. And it's important that, we all help each other in the right way.
Yeah, and I think you hired the right CRO to kind of act as kind of complementary to you and Kevin, is Mark, because his daily posts are pretty riveting. And I'm not a pure sales guy, but I get a lot out of them too.
We
So
hire, that's one of the criteria, is that you are able to communicate effectively and transparently. So yes, Mark is definitely out there and highly visible, given his role as CRO, given his role and his experience scaling outreach to a multi-$100 million company.
yeah,
But ultimately anyone else, like one of our sales engineers, Sean, he's had a couple of great posts from as a sales engineer. And we just encourage people to communicate. And it's not a comfortable thing. It is very scary to go on LinkedIn and share your thoughts, because you feel you will be judged by your peers. You will be judged by strangers. And I'm going to tell you right now, yes, you will be judged, but who cares? Like, it's all, if one person gains value from your post, if one person appreciates your advice, if one person say operates their CS motion in a different way and is valuable, you just made a difference for the community that you are a part of. And all the people that are judging, it doesn't matter.
hello, audience. That's what we call authenticity. So, next question, Edward. So, digging a little deeper in your role as a CEO, what you talked about the pressures, especially today's economy. What are a few metrics that you focus on at your level that this audience of customer success professionals would really kind of appreciate hearing you talk about?
Yeah, I think the audience needs no education on the importance of gross retention and net dollar retention. That said, it is incredibly tough right now. The benchmark for those metrics has gone down tremendously. 120 is not the baseline anymore. 90% gross is not the baseline anymore. Everyone out there is hurting. So if there's one thing that I want to call, is everyone here should just have give yourself a bit more grace on how your team is performing, because a lot of things are outside of your control. That said, in the earlier days when the economy was great, these two are obviously core metrics that people look at. Then there's also net promoter score, CSAT, obviously top line net new business revenue. But the one thing that I think most CEOs are looking through now is, how do you operate more efficiently? how much revenue is being brought in per employee. And that is a core concept that I don't think a lot of first-time founders ever thought about, and maybe not a lot of founders who have raised a ton of money could think of, because you don't necessarily need your revenue or your employees to generate a ton of revenue, because you can always raise more money. And in this market, it's just not available. And I think everybody needs to produce, everybody needs to generate revenue. So I think that's the mindset shift of why Catalyst messaging is very different than all the other customer success platform is. We think about it as revenue. How does the post-sales team partner with every single function in the company to generate more revenue? The success of your customers or customer success is not the responsibility of just a CS team. It is the responsibility of sales to bring in the best fit customers and translate their business requirements effectively so that CS teams can drive value creation and value realization from day one. It is the responsibility of marketing team to bring in inbound leads that are true ICPs and not people that are confused about what your product lies. Yeah. It is the responsibility of the product leader to tell the CS team, this is when a customer is finding their first aha moment, and this is when you should be reaching out to them. That is not the responsibility of the CS team to know when is the product designed to have the aha moments. Then otherwise, what are product leaders doing? And I think a lot of times CS teams bear that weight. So I think it's all about driving revenue now, and how do you collectively work together as an organization to drive that?
Yeah, I really like that that example of the product leader, because too often CS stumbles along thinking they have to know that, and so they have to kind of get educated about the product and know all the ins and outs before they reach the end of the rope, and then they might ask the product leader, well, what should we be focusing on? But really, the product leader should be more kind of proactive in providing that information to CS. Yeah. So we're nearing the end of the calendar year, and many people take a look back at this time of year. It's a very momentous year in customer success, of course, not in a great way. We at ESG actually just co-sponsored a CS leadership study with ChurnZero, HubSpot, and SaaStr that looked at the industry and broke out a variety of insights. And while there are a number of interesting and exciting developments, especially in AI, much of the year saw CS professionals in a collective state of anxiety for their jobs and for their organization's funding, and in some cases for their org's very existence. So what's the top trend that you see in customer success, one that will make a big difference to business and to the profession of customer success in the next 5 years?
I think the biggest misconception out there is that CS folks are getting laid off more than other positions.
Right.
LinkedIn just laid off 600 positions across their company. And in all articles, they highlighted that the folks that were laid off were engineering, product, talent, and finance. Not a single one in customer success. And I think because the customer success community is so tight, it's so public, it's so unified, it's so vocal, which is why you see a bunch of support from folks on, hey, like so-and-so is laid off. Like, how can we get them support? How can we get them jobs? Or, hey, here's some people that I know. And I love that. I love that for CS. I love that because that is our community and that is why it's strong. The reality is CS and post-sales is the most needed function right now. There's a report by Lightspeed Ventures that says sales quota attainment is down, sales cycle is up, win rates are down across the board for every business. Unless you are OpenAI, you are struggling to generate new business revenue. And I think the biggest trend I see is more businesses will understand that an automated customer journey, a data-driven customer health score, and a digital CS motion that isn't just designed for your SMB or your smallest, lowest paying customers, but a digital motion that spans across mid-market, that spans across enterprise. That is now going to be the standard.
Yeah.
And I think AI isn't here to replace CSMs and AMs. And AI is here to enable them to do less manual work, like scheduling meetings, like digging through countless product adoption data from multiple different tools so that you can have a productive conversation without you spending 8 hours of your time trying to figure out and exploring the account.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and speaking of AI, all interviews have to talk about AI a bit, and we're no exception here. So it makes perfect sense to me, since I feel it's the most transformative technology, and you just kind of gave a good example of how that can happen at the kind of the low levels. I'm not talking about generative AI. I'm just talking about AI. So how is Catalyst thinking about AI, and not just generative AI, in terms of its own business processes, but also the platform that you guys sell into the market? How are you guys thinking about AI?
I think folks in the community have to be careful about AI, because there's a lot of AI that is a bunch of folks in a room, a bunch of data scientists in a room crunching numbers, calculating it, and spitting back to it, and providing that as that AI model. I think that capability has been completely decimated with the new releases from OpenAI. And that's elevated every single business, for probably everyone on this call, Catalyst included, to be able to drive AI capabilities into your product. That said, AI is nothing without a core set of data and data foundations to operate off, to model off of, to analyze, then to prescribe. And I think for Catalyst, we have that advantage. We have over 7 years of customer data of 200 plus of the top companies on the world, the fastest growing companies in the world, and we know their data. We connect their Salesforce data. We connect their data warehouse data from Databricks and Snowflake. We have their Zendesk and Jira ticket data. We have seen the market downturn probably before a lot of the people on the market saw it, because we see our customers' churn data, because we enable them to see their churn data. We see our customers' customer health data because we enable them to see that health data. So the things that we're going to be able to do on Catalyst are going to be, hey, these are some of the customers that have churned last quarter. These are some customers that are starting to look like it. Okay. These are some of your customers that bought and spent and acquired new expansion motions despite the economic downturn. These are customers that look like those. Your sales team should reach out ASAP. Hey, your marketing team should start to market to these folks, because these are the folks that actually spend despite the economy. So again, this is unifying the entire company to drive that motion. But this is what having a foundational data set allows you to do on AI. And it's something that Catalyst is super excited about in our upcoming roadmap.
Yeah, I've attended a lot of academic level seminars live at University of Toronto on AI with these professors, and they basically say AI is simply just prediction technology. And I think the way you just described it there is a great use case that would be very valuable for your customers to know patterns that have emerged that you're giving them the heads up about, and they need to pay attention to. And so I think that's really a good description. I have a question from the audience from Theo, all the way from Athens, Greece. Thanks, Theo, for joining. If you were asked to merge a customer education team with an existing onboarding team, what would be the first thing that you'd do as a leader?
That's a good question. Without understanding, it's hard because I don't know what your business is, or whether it's in what sector, or whether it's B2B, but I think onboarding and customer education right now plays a tremendous role, because there's one part of, hey, how do you onboard and get the systems integrated correctly? That's what the onboarding and implementation team is responsible. They are responsible for getting the customer in a place that they can self-drive and self-operate your product without continuous support from the implementation folks. Now, customer education, whether that's one-to-one or one-to-many, the most important thing is, how do you align exactly what it is during implementation that they're looking to be educated on? every customer has a different use case that they're looking for. Do you have that data set organized is probably the number one thing. Is, can you easily map every implementation to a use case that they are designed to be educated on? There's got to be a core set that you are being prescriptive with your customers. This is the number one thing. If you aren't prescriptive with your customers, you're going to end up with 100 different use cases. As an example, at Catalyst, there's going to be a bunch of things that you're going to want to be able to do with Catalyst, but there are 4 core moments of impact that we expect you to feel in the first 90 days of using Catalyst that we are going to prescribe to you. You are not only buying Catalyst for our software, you are buying Catalyst for our expertise. So we are going to trust through 200 plus deployments that when we prescribe these 4 moments of impact, you are going to expect it. You are going to enjoy it. You're going to love it. And the customer education piece is going to match those 4 moments of impact. It's going to continuously reinforce the value. It's going to make sure that that is driven into your head, that it creates value for your business. So it's hard for me to talk about how to integrate those systems, but at a very high level, I think that's how those two are connected.
You know, the last couple of answers you provided, you touched on the data from a couple hundred customers, really high value customers, and really successful companies in the world. How large is your data analytics team? I'm just curious about that. Like, who's crunching that stuff?
Well, we've designed our product to crunch that, right? Okay. Like I think that's the key part, is that we're not saying, hey, we have a room of people, and if one of them decides to not show up to work, Catalyst no longer works. There's products out there that are like that, but our system is designed for, you plug in your data, we pull in your Salesforce, we pull in your Redshift, you tell us the formulas that you want calculated, and we will calculate the metrics that you need. We will surface those metrics that you need, and we will highlight the accounts that are at risk and highlight the accounts that are ready for upsell. And the system is doing that calculation for you.
Yeah. Okay, good. Because I was hoping that would be the answer, just to clarify for the audience. Let's talk a little bit more about the platform. It's no secret, I mentioned at the beginning, that the company sees the platform as more than a niche product for customer success. It's actually being positioned for broader needs, to address broader needs, sales, marketing, product. So is the cross-org suite how the market should think of Catalyst? We talked about customer growth platform. Is that how you really want to be seen by the broader industry? And a few words, why does such a broad and bold play make sense at this point in business?
There is no question that the primary end user for a Catalyst are customer success managers, account managers, and account executives responsible for driving upsell. And account executives that drive new business, that are passing off notes and seamlessly handing off. Sales engineers is another stakeholder. Implementation team is another stakeholder. Now, do product managers use the product? Absolutely. Do marketing managers use the product? Absolutely. So let me give you a couple examples, starting with the sales side. We have a customer, almost $1 billion in valuation, hundreds of employees, one of the fastest growing companies on the market. They are moving all of their account executives off of Salesforce. Now, why? Salesforce is a CRM tool designed for salespeople, and they've been using it for decades. But the challenge that they were having is they couldn't see good product telemetry, customer adoption data inside of Salesforce. And their account managers and their CSMs are inside of Catalyst and documenting the customer journey, documenting workflows, documenting renewal conversations. And more importantly, those CSMs and AMs can see product adoption. So they're moving all of their account executives off of Salesforce into Catalyst, which is a huge momentous event for us. And that's the way that we think about it, is now how do we unify that go-to-market motion? Now, we also have marketers that come in and they say, look, I'm tired of asking CSMs which customers are referenceable customers. I'm tired of asking CSMs, where can I pull some good quotes from the last quarterly business reviews for our case studies? Now they just go into Catalyst and they're able to do customer segments and they're able to pull those directly, and that saves CSM's time. You then have product managers that said, look, I am developing a new product. and I need, show me all customers that are upcoming for renewal in the next 6 months that hate XYZ piece of our product. In a matter of seconds, you can drill down that segmentation and get that data. So we see product managers log in, but I want to be very careful on like, hey, this is a cross-org tool for cross-org suite tool, because that's absolutely not how we market it. First and foremost, Catalyst is a go-to-market revenue generating tool for post-sales teams, but it absolutely pulls and invites other stakeholders in. Because again, one of our mantras is customer success is the center of your organization. It is the responsibility of everyone. And if you can pull all the other departments, that is what's going to make CSM's jobs a lot easier.
So related to that, I have a theory that we're on the cusp of significant change in the way typical company organizations operate. So last couple hundred years, sales has always ruled the roost. All of the departments are part of the supporting cast of characters, and it's true now as it's ever been. I don't see a lot of change, but I think that's about to change. And I say that because I think AI is going to force this to happen. And when I hear you talk about your product, and you're already seeing some examples of other organizations starting to kind of look into Catalyst or use Catalyst, I see technology driving. Maybe I'm an idealist or an optimist. I am, but I see technology driving, finally, kind of eroding the walls of silos within companies. I'm just curious to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, right now what's happening across a lot of businesses is CEOs are being told, we need to close more business, as much business. We need to continue to close business, but we can't hire more anyone. No more marketing folks, no more salespeople, no more CSMs, no more product managers, no more engineering. And on the CS side, they're the ones that are really impacted, because the only thing that is more is you still need to get more customers, which means now CS has the tough job of managing more books of business without change. So CS needs to think about, how do you automate your outreaches? How do you reach more customers? How do you reach more customers at the right moment in time that they want to be reached out to? How do you drive more conversations? How do you, on scale, drive deeper product penetration faster? This is what CFOs are evaluating from CS professionals. And this is how CS professionals should be positioning their functions, should be positioning their values, should be positioning their orgs. An enterprise rep, even if you are managing 10 accounts, even if you are managing 5 accounts, you are not sitting in front of your laptop with 5 tools open and watching them in real time, how they're using their product, watching full story for hours, watching Mixpanel and reading real event logs on how the customer is adopting. That's at that point, you're literally just a person sitting in front of a computer. You've become a data analyst. And CSMs and enterprise CSMs are not data analysts. What needs to happen is, most of your customers don't want to speak to you. But what would happen if, instead of you sitting there watching, analyzing hours and hours of data, that one of the 5 customers that you are responsible for, the primary champion, gets an automated email from you that says, hey, I saw you using feature XYZ. It's one of our best products. I recorded a short Loom video clip just for you. It's 1 minute long, 2x speed. It's 30 seconds. And it gives you some better tips on how to be more effective in driving value from that feature. Let me know if you want to catch up. Now the customer says, wow, first of all, thank you, Edward, for caring about when I'm using your product. And B, how did you know I was using your product? C, you're right, I'm too busy to talk to you. So thank you for letting me digest content on my own time. And wow, that actually was very helpful. And I learned something. Let me set up time with you to talk more. All of that did not happen in real time. None of that was in real time. The CS person wasn't sitting there watching. The CSM certainly didn't record that Loom video in real time. All of that is driven through a system like Catalyst, to be able to automate that flow so that you are reaching customers faster and a broader reach and in a more automated fashion. Now, what that enables you to do, that just gave you 5 to 10 hours back and giving you more conversations to drive the right value for what CSMs are. And it's no longer about relationship building. It's about value creation for the customers. Yeah. That is the number one thing CS is responsible for. That is the number one thing that you are going to prove how you generate revenue for the business. And that is the number one way in which every CFO is evaluating the CS job function.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, it's got to be measurable value. Otherwise, you're in a lot of trouble, I think. And that's, churn will happen as a result. So I was going to wait for this question for the end, but I think I'll bring it in now. It's from Patrick in the audience, because you mentioned a lot about data there. And so he wants to know, you mentioned system generated data, pulling in Salesforce data, Jira, Zendesk, that the company is gathering. What other data, or where do you get data that will show what a company is doing, like inside information, knowing the direction strategy of a company that will help CSMs upsell or target the particular product?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very hard to get inside information if I'm interpreting that question correctly. As an example, we have a publicly traded company that we are. I was just chatting with earlier this morning, and they were sharing with me strategies of what they're planning to do for next year. What are the key goals? The CRO was very adamant about a couple of strategic things that must happen and how Catalyst can help them do that. But none of that information should be available to me prior to that conversation, because they're a publicly traded company, and I could likely do a lot of illegal things with that data. That is absolutely something that no one should have access to. So yeah. I think the only way that we can get data is outside of like general tools like Salesforce, Jira, and Zendesk, is through a data warehouse. And there are tools like Databricks, Snowflake, Redshift, BigQuery, if some of you, any of these things are familiar. But at the end of the day, it's a single cloud-based data store repository that your engineering team is pumping all of their data in, all of the company's data in, but there's not going to be like strategic decks and et cetera. So I think the best way to gather that is there's no such thing as quarterly business reviews. It's got to be way more frequent than that. And part of your job in your check-ins with customers is to find out what are the top line goals. And I love this question, Patrick, because a lot of times CSMs and post-sales team forget to ask, what is the top line business goal? They always ask, what is your goal for our product? Mm-hmm. As in, hey, you bought Catalyst. What is it that you want to achieve with Catalyst? But the bigger question is exactly what you alluded to, Patrick, is what is the strategy of the business? What are your KPIs that the board is measuring you guys at? What are you as a leader personally responsible for delivering? What are some of the challenges your team is facing right now that is stopping you from achieving those goals? I think how do you articulate that is then how you transcribe that information to implementation team, transcribe that information to sales engineers, transcribe that information to CSMs and support, so that you are able to understand what is their business position. But I don't think there's an automated way to gather that, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask a question that might produce a similar answer, but you might have a kind of a different nuanced approach to it. So my friend Mark Stoos is the CEO of Proof Analytics, kind of predictive marketing technology automation. He calls it, we're in an environment of high cost of money. And so he talks a lot about how high cost of money is driving decision-making all throughout all companies. And, you're the CEO of a company. So obviously you have an intimate view of the machinery of how the company operates, and cash flow is the oil that makes things run smoothly. So, what should customer success professionals be doing differently, position their organization or their business function as a key component for companies in the long term, even in the high cost of money environment? I hope that was clear.
Yeah, I think the number one thing that CFOs are judging CS orgs on right now are they understand that you can't extract more. It's hard to extract more expansions revenue. They understand that it's hard to prevent churn. But in a high cost environment where CS folks have to provide value into the world, which is in a down market, how do you bring value to the organization? And I think a lot of the things that CS organizations can control right now is product penetration. Like, how can you get your customers to adopt more? But it's not just about getting them to adopt more. It's how do you prove in a very systematic way that you've been able to get them to adopt more? How do you present a data to the board that says, hey, this is a playbook that we've run for this segment of customers, totaling $10 million of ARR, one fifth of our business that has not been adopting one of our core features. It is a very challenge. We're doing our best to drive as much expansions right now. We're doing our best to drive as much renewals right now, but we all know the economy is tough. But at the end of the quarter, the winning data point that the CS team can show is we actually improved the adoption of one of our core products by 30%. That 30% in deeper penetration, deeper adoption is going to show up in next quarter's renewals, is going to show up in upsells, because you could easily know if they're adopting more and the economy at some point in time is going to come back, that's how you're going to drive more revenue for the business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really solid answer. I mean, I think many in the community think, okay, the CEO is looking at NRR. How are we going to kind of like persuade them that we are a critical piece of delivering higher NRR? I think there's the example you provided. It's very specific, and you have to be very specific in terms of the connection your activities are, how they're connected to the revenue attainment, whether it's retention or growth. And I think that's it's kind of simple to say, but obviously there's work behind it. But the CS professionals, especially the leadership, needs to figure out how you're going to do that. And that's the imperative today in the high cost of money environment, because money's scarce. And so you have to kind of figure out if you truly believe in the mission of customer success and you're going to help customers, you should be excited, I think, by doubling down on your ability to kind of really drive efficiencies and make that connection to the executive level of how to explain that. Matt from the audience has a question. He says, Edward, I love the cross-functional GTM alignment that you're preaching, but saying it is easier than doing, which I kind of just mentioned about the NRR piece. What do you think are the highest leverage CS strategies for driving change across so many departments? That's a tall order.
When I first became a CS leader, I didn't join an existing CS team to become the CS leader. I joined a company which already had millions of revenue, but I joined them as the first CS hire. I joined a company that was majority engineering team driven, product led, EPD led organization. And this was 10 plus years ago. And when I first joined, a lot of the engineers honestly had no clue what customer success was, because back then it was actually, I called it customer onboarding.
Okay.
And they actually had no clue why I was hired. And the reason I bring all that up is because over time, customer success became the focal point of that organization. And that's because myself, along with my team, we knew that this was important, and we weren't afraid to break through the norms and the existing culture that existed in the organization. There are many organizations that are not customer-centric, customer first. They are engineering first. They are product first. They are sales first. But the biggest thing that most people think is that if you are a CSM that you can't speak up in a company-wide meeting and you can't highlight the importance of a customer win. That when you're a CSM, you can't in front of all hands say, hey, like, I want to highlight a recent customer issue that I feel like is very systemic, that if we are going to keep our customers, this is what needs to happen, and these are the changes that need to happen. I talked earlier about one of the core values at Catalyst is operate as an owner. You don't need that to be one of your values to believe that you are an owner of your business. Unless you are absolutely at a company in which you are told you are only allowed to do what you are told to do, and there are many organizations like that, you have the freedom and flexibility to start initiatives to drive that type of change. And a very easy one is creating, off the top of my head, creating a Slack channel that says anyone in the company, if you care about customer wins and customer losses, subscribe to this channel and you can hear it. That's actually enforced at Catalyst. It is the first and only channel that every new hire is invited into, and it's called Bringing CS to the Center. Doesn't matter if you're in engineering, doesn't matter if you're in product, doesn't matter if you're in marketing, you are required to be in this channel. You are required to see our wins, and you are required to see when a customer is pissed off at Catalyst. And if you are one of the folks that delivered that future, you better say something about it. You better see it. You better feel impacted by it. You better go fix it. And now that's the culture at Catalyst, because everyone is bought into understanding customer pain points. And so my point in summary is, it doesn't take much. It honestly just takes one motion, one move, and I'm confident there are others around you that are customer centric, but everyone is just kind of waiting for the other person to do that first initial move, whatever it is. And I think you just add on to it. And that's how I went from, an engineering led culture to now establishing a culture of being customers first, to the point where every all hands, the customer success team was presenting when I first started the role, nobody even knew what customer success was.
So I have a particular fascination doing research around generations in business. And I believe we're about to be part of a sea change in leadership in companies. And I think you just kind of talked about what we can expect to see more of, which is, we mentioned at the beginning, the transparency, but you also just kind of gave a good example of how individual contributors can really take charge of the conversation almost. And I think that's scary for older generations. I'm from an older generation. I can tell you, people they didn't operate in business this way. And so I think I'm a hopeful that we'll see a lot more of that kind of stuff, and kind of applaud you for leading in that direction, because it's about the leadership, right? You set the environment, you give people the kind of the license to speak their minds and to show initiative. So that's great. I think that's a good answer to Matt's question. It really boils down to the individual too, right? So.
And one thing to add to that, and I totally get it's not a comfortable motion, but if you view it as revolting, if you view it as provocative, if you view it as this major earthquake, ground shaking change, the reality is it's not. It's just these are thoughtful things. You're doing it because you care about the customer. You're doing it because you want your company to win. And as long as you approach it in that manner and respectfully in that manner, it would be highly alarming to me if anyone in leadership team said, hey, Edward, that was awful. Like, why did you even bring that up? Or why did you start this initiative to get us to care more about customer? And if that ever comes up, you probably shouldn't be working at a company that is like that as a customer success professional, because there are thousands of other companies that will enable that. And it's not worth it if that's the way that motions are responded in that way.
Yeah, I think it becomes a competitive edge at some point. So we're coming near the end of the webinar, and I want to really touch on a personal health challenge that you faced, or you're still facing this year. You're public about it. A recent LinkedIn post, you mentioned your ordeal began with permanent nerve damage resulting from a widely used antibiotic, ciprofloxacin, which left me with complete muscle numbness, crippling body pain, and a struggle with every step I took. So first of all, Edward, I'm very sorry you had to experience that in your family too. Sounds frightening. And reading your post was pretty riveting. I felt like I was living it with you. I'm glad you're on the road to recovery. You and I spoke just before the webinar how you're improving day by day. It's a cautionary tale for the audience, right? Because we don't know any unknown risk from commonplace medication. So that's scary. I don't know you well enough to say that what you experienced your own road to Damascus, but perhaps the experience is shaping you differently somehow. If you can, please share with us whether the experience has taught you things about yourself that you weren't entirely aware of, and whether you feel the experience might influence the way you lead others and lead yourself in your career.
Yeah. I think remote work really helped me because no one could see that I couldn't move. No one could see that I couldn't walk. No one could see that I couldn't lift anything. I was going on meetings the same way that you are viewing me now. And it was a painful 5-month long journey to figure my way out of it. And it was nerve damage that no doctors knew about. And speaking of AI, like every day when I was completely debilitated and demoralized, I would read through hundreds of forums and I plugged all those personal experiences into a model and had it find a common denominator and was self-diagnosing, self-treating myself. Honestly, that's the last thing you want to do. You want professionals, but when the professionals tell you they don't know what to do, you kind of have to take over for your own survival stake. And now I'm great. I'm going to the gym. I'm walking. At some point in time, I couldn't even help my wife take out the trash because it was so heavy for me. To me, it was embarrassing. It was uncomfortable. But for me, I think the biggest lesson here is that I just wasn't in any shape or fashion going to give up. And I also wasn't going to wait for things to come to me. And I think you probably learned a lot about me throughout this conversation that, I'm not one to wait for things to come to me. And I think that's the biggest thing is that life is there's so much going on right now. Mental health is such a drain every single morning. I'm sure speaking for the entire audience that is watching now and that will watch this on video later, that your life is tough right now. Mm-hmm. And it probably gets tougher every single day. There's probably new things that come up that blindside you. It is never ending. And I think if you just sit down and say, look, I'm not going to let that part beat me down. I'm not going to let that part win. And I'm going to go get and create the life that I want. It may not be the ultimate version. It takes time, but every single day is better than the next. And that's one mantra that I live by, which is there is no way that this current day that I'm in is going to be worse than the day before. Even if it's a tiny bit better, I'm going to make it better. Even if I learned one new thing, it's going to be more than what I knew yesterday. Even if I lifted 1 single pound of weight, which was highly embarrassing to go to a gym and not be able to lift, as much as I used to. And people are wondering why I'm lifting these tiny weights. It's because they don't know what's going on with me. But now those weights are increasing. So hopefully that's a helpful message for those that are struggling.
Yeah, I think it is. And I also want to share with the audience that in one of your posts, and I think we talk about people judging others, and people probably did when they saw this, that you couldn't help your wife carry the stroller for your child down the subway stairs. And I'm sure people are like, what's wrong with this guy? Right.
Yeah. It was like, hey, she was carrying the stroller and I'm the one walking my daughter down the stairs in her hand. And it was clear that it was heavy for her. It wasn't like, oh, she was lifting it with one hand. So, kudos to her for supporting me throughout that process. But I think at the end of the day, it's your own world. You want to worry about what anyone's thinking. You got to do what you got to do to survive. And everyone's day is tough right now. So you just got to find the wins, like find a win anywhere that you can to be proud of the day that you just had.
And I think that's a good segue to the final question from the audience. It's an anonymous attendee asks, what advice would you give to experienced CSMs who are struggling to find a job right now?
One good way I think is being vulnerable and writing and sharing your experiences and contributing to the community. I think LinkedIn is a great place for that. The community is tight. There is not a single CS leader that you want to talk to that you can't get to. And if you go through the normal application pool route of applying on a website, you're going to be one of tons of many other applications. But writing and contributing content, commenting on thoughtful other CS leaders that work at great companies on their perspective, what you know, what is your advice and your suggestion. So let's say you are following this company for a long time. There's two options. You can apply directly, or you can find one of their CS leaders that maybe if they're writing something on LinkedIn, you comment on her post. You write a very thoughtful post in response to the topic that she was talking about. If that CS leader says, wow, Edward, that was great insight, never thought about it, great. You just skipped the line in terms of the number of resumes that she is actually not reviewing herself. You just now got in her head. And now all you got to do is go on LinkedIn and say, hey, really appreciated your post. I actually commented on it. Would love to chat with you one-on-one to pick your brain. It's a very, very casual conversation. You're not applying for a job. It is okay to speak with other CS professionals, and they love that. And they want to talk with smart people. And that's actually how the best recruitments happen. A lot of our best employees didn't come through the applicant pool. It came through conversations that I've had with candidates. It came through conversation that my co-founder and other leaders on the team had with candidates. So hopefully that's a good way for you to get it. And I think there are a lot of companies out there hiring right now. And but there's also a lot of people applying. So I think it's about switching up your strategy of how do you get in front of leaders that make the decision for who they want on their team.
Yeah, I like that answer. And I would just also add that everyone, if you're an experienced CSM, you probably have some specific expertise that you're proud of. You should leverage that in those conversations Edward just talked about. Get involved in the community. If people are having conversations that are kind of related to that, you should be weighing in on those things. People appreciate when they put a post out if some people weigh in with some thoughtful commentary. There's nothing wrong with that. There's actually quite positive. So I always ask the guest at the end of the webinar to recommend a book. I hope you've thought of one, Edward, that might be related to something we talked about today.
Yeah, I'm gonna be highly consistent in my theme of including the book recommendation. This was actually a book recommended to me by my previous boss at my previous company when I was a CS leader, and he was the co-founder of the company. It's a book called Relentless by Tim Grover. For those of you that don't know, he's a very, very famous personal and mental trainer for Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade, some of the best, most elite professional athletes. And the book title Relentless should just tell you a little bit about what the book is about. But, you know, it's just a combination of never giving up and always pushing for exactly what you want, and knowing that it's going to take time, knowing that it's going to be painful, knowing that it's not going to be an easy journey. But how do you handle the hard things in your life better? How do you respond to them? And again, how do you view it as a day by day, step by step, minute by minute approach, and take it one step at a time and relentlessly getting to your goal? And I think for me, it was just a great book to see how some of the best athletes that I admire, and seeing their drive to win. It's a great way for me to get through my day, because like everyone else on this call, I'm getting hit with blindsided things all the time that make my life a struggle. But I'm not just gonna hang it up and give up right then and there.
I think that's a terrific suggestion. And actually, really mirrors, I think, your personality. So really appreciate that. And Mel, my colleague, just put the link to that book into the webinar chat if you want to check it out. Edward, thank you. I really appreciate this. I think it was a wonderful conversation, and I really appreciate your time. Hope the audience really got a lot out of it. Audience, please join us next month at the end of November after Thanksgiving, the week after Thanksgiving. You'll see a notice about that. We've got a really good speaker from Cisco joining me on that conversation. So until then, thank you all, and bye for now.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Peter. Have a good
Thanks,
one.
Edward.